Hello everyone, welcome to UMD Media. UMD Media works on work understanding, measuring, and doing. And it strives to contribute for an evidence-based discourse and decision-making in the whole, and specifically in Ethiopia. Those of you who are following us on YouTube and Facebook, please share, like, and subscribe so that we get more audience for this material. Today we will be conversing on Tigray War with Thomas Hammarberg, a Swedish member of parliament, diplomat, and human rights defender. Thomas Hammarberg, please welcome to UMD Media Show.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Awesome. So as usual, at UMD Media, I try to introduce my guests, who they are, where they come from, what backgrounds they have, and so on. So I will be doing that with showing your picture. We'll have a Swedish conversation, a short one as well later. So Thomas Hammarberg is well known in the European context, specifically in the human rights arena, I must say. You have been very active both in Sweden and in Europe, maybe even globally when it comes to human rights issues. But you had also a journalism background, I gathered, and Expression, maybe others as well, where you worked in terms of journalism. And you were also a Nobel Peace Prize winner in the name of Amnesty International. You received on behalf of Amnesty International in 1977. Yeah, and you were the General Secretary of Amnesty International from 1980 to 1986. Save the Children, a number of them. You were even under the Kofi Annan, Special Representative for Cambodia. And most importantly and relevant for our show is you were the European Council Commissioner for Human Rights as well. That's almost 9 years ago, right?
Yes, yeah. I left, no, it's 8 years ago.
8 years ago, yeah, right. And what I saw also is in most of your work, either directly or indirectly, there was a lot you did in terms of children rights and so on. Actually, the plan for this conversation was on Saturday. That was the day of International Day Against Child Labor, right?
Yes, that's true. Yeah. No, I think the struggle, the fight for human rights is rather much based on children's rights. Because if children are protected from violations, I think we go towards a better state. And so for me, it was important to also try to understand what the rights of the child is actually. So I was campaigning there, and I was one of those who formulated the Convention on the Rights of the Child. And after that was adopted by the UN, I was asked to be one of the 10 members of the committee, which should sort of see whether governments really respected the new convention. So I stayed there for 6 years working for children.
That's great. And even, you wrote a lot. And I mean, this is from the Swedish Parliament website, where you have been active and where you are still active. So your area is not even limited to children. You were in the environment and agriculture, standing committee, culture, constitution, everywhere. That's an amazing profile. Actually, this is your recent contribution in
Yeah.
in the Swedish parliament just last week.
Yeah, that's true. There was a discussion about whether there's a need of a special institution in our country to protect human rights. And I said, we need that because we are not perfect.
Debatt
that was the
om ett
discussion.
särskilt institut, oberoende institut för mänskliga rättigheter kunde ha förts redan för cirka 20 år sedan.
Yeah. So you are saying, like you mentioned, this was something that we should have done 20 years ago, right?
Yes, that's the idea.
Yeah, and I don't want to, play it full for our English viewers, but the reason I, have that is you are active domestically, still, pushing for the next better protection of human rights everywhere, from Sweden to elsewhere to Tigray, where we'll be talking about today. Yeah, and that's a very rich experience, and I just want to show to our viewers that you are a man who knows what he's talking about. And you wrote a number of things, including those that are relevant for school children with rights, even advocating internationally. This attracted me, actually, the Palestinian issue, where you say, efter 5 decennier svek, äntligen dags. Is it about time? Yeah. And the Convention on Children's Rights, that's a big one. And you talk about Europe and so on. So even you were leading this commission against Roma, right?
Yeah. That's one of the minorities here, as you know, in Sweden. And I feel that they are not well treated, and that there is still some, sometimes hidden, but sometimes very open, discrimination against them. And this is, of course, not in line with human rights.
Yeah, you fight everywhere. That's, and so today is the 223rd day since the war on Tigray started. And you see the numbers here. I don't want to repeat them. The number of children separated from their parents, over 6,000. This based on UNICEF figures, based on UN figures, again, 5.2 million people needing emergency food. The number of civilians estimated killed is staggering. Refugees in Sudan. All this, the rape, gang rape, all that. So first, my question is, when and how did you come to to be aware of the Tigray issue, the war on Tigray? Because what led me to contact you and to have this conversation is your letter, your written question in the parliament to the foreign minister of Sweden. So before we go there, can you paint a picture for us, Thomas, how and when you come, aware of this, or in general? Have you been to Ethiopia in general?
So have you been?
Have you been to Ethiopia before?
Yeah, I've been in Ethiopia for many years. Not now, unfortunately. I really would have liked to go now, because so many things are happening, and I would like to see with my own eyes and talk with people there, but it hasn't been possible because of the pandemic. But when I was Secretary General of Save the Children, and later with the Amnesty International, I did visit Ethiopia and traveled around as well. So, and Ethiopia is one of those countries where if you go there and you talk with people, you are it stays with you. And of course, I saw the problems already then. But then now, during this year, I read the reports that reached me, which told that the situation in Tigray had gone very, very serious. And my concern was really very much the fact that this was there in the reports, but very little was reported in Sweden, in the media and in the political debate. It was almost forgotten completely. And of course, there was an explanation when I asked people why, that there were so many other things happening, and it was Israel-Palestine, and it was Belarus, and also problems in some of the Asian countries. But, you know, when you work for human rights, really, and for justice of people, you have to try to be open all the time. And you cannot just ignore a very serious situation. It's not fair. It's not right. And therefore, I began to study more and more. And I come to the conclusion that, especially in Tigray, but there are problems in other parts of Ethiopia as well, as you know. But Tigray, it went very, very far when it comes to oppression, killings, rapes of women, and pushing away people from their homes, putting fire on homes, etc. And the number of deaths is horrible. And therefore I felt that we have an obligation to try to make this observed, to secure that the Foreign Office in Sweden brings this up in European Union, and also tries to take a position of its own. And also that now we have come to a situation, I understand that a famine is there already. Starvation of people, which we hope will never happen again. And that means also that it's gone from very brutal violations of human rights into a situation where people are starving. And the two brings they are related. It's not a separate thing. It's part of the whole package. And therefore, I hope now that we would convince the Swedish aid agencies that it would take an even more active position when it comes to what is now going on in Ethiopia. Before it goes too wrong, because it can be very and even more disastrous problems if this is not acted upon. And the international community, the African states, the European and Americans and East, all the world should take a position on this, because it sets an extremely bad example. If this could go on without any reaction from the outside, it would make people there, of course, very, very disappointed. And they would lose all the hope they have, I think, if there isn't a strong international solidarity being demonstrated in action nowadays. So for me, it was, and I'm not alone. I have friends also who are in the parliament, and we work together and try to wake up. My letter to, this is a sort of procedure we have, that you could write a letter to a minister, and the minister is forced to answer within 1 week. I raised it with her in order for her to take action. And now I get the informal reports that they are really taking this seriously. And there is a meeting with SIDA, the aid agency, but also there will be this being raised in the European Union to secure that there will be a stronger support. So we
will go into the details, but I'm glad you mentioned that there was less attention in the Swedish media and so on. I gathered that some couple of months ago, Jan Eliasson, who was the UN Undersecretary and so on. So he was tweeting the same, exactly the same. He was mentioning about tuning into P1 and so on, the Swedish radio, and he was, getting nothing. So he was, pushing for that attention. So I just remember that. And but what you did was like back in August. So I saw this. This is from August 10th, and this is your. I don't know if our viewers can see it, but it's a 5-page letter or written question, as it's called in Swedish, to the minister. There in August, you are mentioning the situation in Ethiopia or Oromia. This was just a month after, not a month actually, maybe around that, after Hachalu Hundesa's killing. So you are not new to advocating, for justice, national dialogue. That's what you are pushing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and then
that's one of the key terms we have. National dialogue is absolutely necessary, and this is not my idea. It's something that I've picked up from many of my friends from Ethiopia. They come back to that term, and I think it's so strong and so important.
Exactly, and you were even out in the media. This is just
if we are serious about friendship, one has to tell the truth. And that's what we would like to discuss. I feel that there is a need of something. The reports we get are alarming, and we feel that some of the promises that was given by the Prime Minister in Oslo have not been fulfilled now, 17 months later. So that's in itself a message that requires a discussion. So we feel that there's a need of some changes taking place fairly soon. And some of the problems probably relates to the pandemic, but not all of them. And there seems to be a growing polarization in the political life in a situation when we would need the opposite, understanding, trying to build a dialogue, understanding on how you share the power. That, for instance, is election committee that you mentioned, the board there, that would be a place where you have all the different opinions really represented there, not only one part of the political sphere. So there are things to change, of course, now, and that's why we wanted to raise this issue in a friendly manner, as I've said several times now.
So, Thomas, here back in August 2020, this is not August 2021, this is a mistake on the typing. You were pushing, or at least advocating for national dialogue. So my question to you is, what is your assessment of the Swedish government's at least, the executive committee, the branch, the ministers and so on, how they were handling their relationship with Ethiopia? Because you mentioned about his speech in Oslo after receiving the Nobel Peace Prize and so on. So is it fair to say that Swedish was just very weak, or even supporting no matter what the Ethiopian government?
Yes, I think there was some wishful thinking that he would mean a real change to the positive, and that that's why he got the prize, partly because of the peace agreement with his neighbor country. But I think, frankly, in retrospect, the whole thing was naive. And it was unfortunate, actually, that the prize was handled out like that, because I think it may undermine the credibility of the whole process of the Peace Prize. As having been involved myself once in the process of receiving for an organization the prize, I think it's very important that it does exist, and it's seen as an objective and serious concern about how you protect peace in the world. And someone who starts a war and is responsible for such cruel methods during the war is not really someone who should have the prize as a sort of positive thing for him. And I think it was a sad decision now in retrospect. And I think the Swedish elite just did not know what could happen, and they were just naive about the situation. They should have waited. Of course, there have been some other prices which could, in retrospect, be seen as unfortunate. But this is one of the worst cases, in my opinion.
But one thing the people are saying already now is maybe the decision to give him the Nobel Peace Prize at that time was a political motive. Is it because, some people, question the whole motive of doing that? So, for example, as we speak today, this is fresh from the kind of press, so to speak. This is an opinion website where they are saying from today, June 14th, revoke the Nobel Peace Prize. And some people were even, asking at least the committee should resign, the committee that awarded him and so on. So is there any potential that from the get-go there was a political motive for giving? Because isn't it irony that he got the prize for making peace with Eritrea? Now he brought Eritrea to just do all these unspeakable atrocities on his own people.
I think that the intention was positive, but the result was not good, and I think there was a naivety about what could happen after the prize. The problem is now that it's not possible, according to the statute of the Nobel Peace Committee, to take back the prize that they handed out. It's specifically said in the key document they are based on, that when you give it to someone, that stays forever. You cannot begin to access his value or her value after the prize has been given. So my feeling is that and I know that there are people who really would like the committee to pull back the prize. The response they will get from Oslo is that this is against the rules and they have no right to do it. But I think fair enough if they have that rule. But I think that there is a need to demonstrate that the committee or some members of the committee or Oslo or Norway, Sweden, they are very, very disappointed that someone who got that prestigious prize is able to do these awful things. So it should be possible to demonstrate that there is a dislike of what has happened after the prize. This is not how a prize winner should behave. A prize for human rights and peace. Human rights and peace, that's a prize. It cannot sort of dirty down, make dirty out of such a prize. And so I hope that the committee will find a way to demonstrate their dislike of what has happened. But I'm sure they will insist that they cannot change the statute for one case. So, but the problem remains. There's a need to. It will also uphold the prestige of the committee if there is some kind of sign that this is not what we like.
That's right. That's right. So coming back to you, Thomas, on your recent letter or written question to the minister at the Swedish Parliament was from 7th of April. And I found it to be, very short, but at the same time, very comprehensive in terms of the details. So to help, our viewers, I will be, pointing to some of the things that you mentioned. You also cite a number of sources. Yeah. So it clearly shows you are well informed about the details and so on. So I will come to that question. But this is 7th of April. And in May, you were part of a discussion, a virtual discussion. I captured some of what you said there. and let me play it because it's in English as well.
I thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me. I think this might be a very important meeting, and I would just like to convey the very deep concerns that we have in my country when it comes to Ethiopia and what is happening there. As you know, the Prime Minister got the Nobel Peace Prize 1.5 years ago, and this was a moment when we felt that perhaps there was a positive movement taking place in Ethiopia. Ethiopia, of course, is a country with many Swedes being very loyal and very positive towards the country itself. There is a sort of friendship between my country and Ethiopia since many, many years. And that, I think, meant that when we began to get reports on what is going on in several parts of Ethiopia, in fact, and the violence that began to spread, and the lack of actions by the federal government to stop this development, on the contrary, perhaps even contributed badly to it, we felt that we need to take some kind of a position. And we are still discussing it. And one reason why I'm coming here is actually to listen to good advice on what we could do from our side, also in order to bring the cases up, sort of to use a policy which do not respect the difference between the regions there. That may even cause a situation where there will be further feelings among people that hopefully I think that the main message I bring from this meeting is the absolute need of a national dialogue, because even if they break away from one another, some of the parts of Ethiopia today, they are neighbors and they have to relate to one another. And therefore, I think that the attempt to keep Ethiopia together is very important, but that does require a national dialogue with respect for all different parts, all different groups in the country. It's a major challenge, but I see that as the least bad solution to this present situation.
So you continue to
thank you very much for inviting me.
The denominator of whatever you say, whatever you write. I saw, in the past, getting ready for this conversation, is the national dialogue, the need for that, which is very important. Actually, I don't know if you have access or if you had access to the letters that were being issued from the Tigray government before the war, was for such national dialogue, because there was an attempt to bridge, the gap between the region and the federal government. But that was just, a part of the solution. But coming back to your letter, where you can also comment, there is a mention of another letter in this 31st of May, where I found all this list. So if I share it here, you talk about the mass assault. You talk about the ethnic cleansing of people of Tigray. You talk about the extrajudicial killings, big scale assaults, and large scope of sexual rape, violence, all that. Even the use of chemical weapons reportedly used, and the blocking of human rights aid, and so that what you were mentioning earlier, the mass starvation as a weapon is being used, and so on. So I found this to be a very detailed one, including your citation to Mukesh Kapila. Actually, I'm speaking to Mukesh Kapila this week. I will be talking to him. And you mentioned about Tsadale, and I will be speaking to Tsadale Lemma as well next week. So it's a kind of chain reaction. So with this, precise but at the same time deep and comprehensive letter, what were you getting? I mean, the response. I have the written response of the minister as well. How do you assess that? What do you think about her response?
I think without being sort of praising my own actions there, I do think it had some impact. The letter had an impact, and I know that they have had meetings internally to discuss what will be the next step. My friend in the parliament also, Anders Österberg, has also been pushing on her. We two together work in tandem when it comes to convincing the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the whole ministry, that this must now be given a very high priority. It's a very serious situation. And so what I see is a beginning of an understanding that this must be upgraded when it comes to importance in the Swedish foreign policy. So we will see, but we will continue to try. It's important to come with facts, and we have studied carefully almost everything we could find out, reported. And of course, it would be ideal to go there oneself, but due to the pandemic, it hasn't been possible. But as soon as it's sort of open for a trip, I would certainly go there, hopefully together with my friend, and we would really try to study more in depth. But I don't think we have missed points. I think we have, through reading so many different reports and trying to assess and compare, we have formed ourselves a picture which I think would stand up to scrutiny.
Wow. Yeah, I'm so happy. Like I said, it's a very short, it's not even 2 pages, but with that you captured everything and well supported, in my opinion, and citing this independent, well experienced people like Mukesh Kapila, who knows, he clearly said Tigray genocide is a modern genocide, having seen it in Darfur, Rwanda, and so on. But in her response here, she's talking about increasing humanitarian support and so on. My understanding is she's talking about the support through SIDA to the federal government. But from what you are saying, even if we are not, if we can't forget this letter, you are talking about internal discussions you have had, they will do something. Is that the right way to understand it?
Yes, I think so. But the key point is to follow through. And not allow this to be forgotten. And as Sweden is not such a big country, and it seems sometimes that there is only a focus on 1 or 2 problems abroad, and now there's no opening now any longer to go back when it comes to Ethiopia. We have to continue now to respect human rights in that country. We just have to go on.
Talking about the international response, European response, given your global reach, your experience, long-standing experience as well, the UN level. So how do you assess in general the international response, and specifically even the recent G7 meeting? I don't know if you had the time to look at the press release concerning Tigray.
No, I know it was up there, but I have not studied the text. I couldn't see how serious they seem to be when it comes to this. It's always positive that things are mentioned during these top meetings, but it's the real action that counts, and we will see. And there's a need to push further. I think it's important that the EU takes an active stance on this and not only rely on United States or some other governments, but EU has a role to play here, and it should really not turn down their responsibility on this. So, and of course, I mean, I said in earlier, and you quoted it, that there is a certain relationship between Sweden and Ethiopia since many years, and there are quite a number of Swedes who have a lot of nice memories and friendship in Ethiopia, and I hope we will be able to mobilize those friends also in a more asserted position in relation to what should be done. It's not enough just to feel pity for people in Ethiopia. It's also a question of turning that concern into concrete actions of solidarity. That's what we should aim for.
Yeah, I want to pick your brain on your experience, elsewhere in Cambodia and other places, from the Commissioner of Human Rights at the European Union as well. So my reading of what was going on in Tigray from November 4 onward is the government first tried to block all information coming out of Tigray. As you know, communication, telecommunication, transport, flights, internet, everything. And whenever there is an information leaking out in terms of the crime, all that, they deny forcefully, I would say government and the elites that supporting it. And then whenever denial is not the option, they try to undermine, the scale, and so on. They try to trivialize that. And finally, if they can't undermine, they try to justify it. They play it as if it's part of the game and so on. So I see this cycle playing now and then. So my question to you is this, your understanding as well when it comes to what you were reading, following? And the other question is, was there anywhere in your experience that you have seen this scale of atrocities, specifically by inviting, a neighboring country and other countries as well? As we know, Somalian parents are now, asking where are our kids? They went to Eritrea, but now they ended up being, killed in Tigray and so on. So my question is, what is your assessment of how this machinery of crime was operating since November 4 compared to elsewhere from your experience?
It's one of the worst examples in modern time, and which I have been in contact with. One aspect which is very unusual is the role of a neighbor country. Eritrea has played a very active, and when it comes to human rights, a very negative role in this. And the reports we have got and received and checked up has said that in some of the situations they were even worse than the national army was. But they are still there, and the promise that they will be sent back or withdrawn obviously is not fulfilled. They are still there, according to the reports we have, and this is quite unique, that a neighbor country is not only allowed to come in and commit crimes against humanity and human rights violations, but also almost appear to be encouraged to do it. That's very unusual. And of course, bitterness among people will grow against this neighbor country, Eritrea, and so that's one of the unique aspects. The fact that events in Tigray was hidden away, no reporting allowed, etc. That similar things have happened, but here it was very systematic, and actually made it less easy for outsiders like us to really get the information we needed in order to take positions. But it leaked out, and we got the information, but there was a delay there because of that, definitely. no, it's one of the worst situations we have in the world today, and there are not many recent examples similar to this one.
And on the on your back on the May 31st letter, like I said, very short but rich in content and you know, in the detail. You mentioned all the details of the crimes that are happening, but you stopped from mentioning the criminals. So I mean, from the European Union to, you know, the US, they were clear about the let's say Eritrean forces, Amhara forces, Ethiopian forces, and so on. So I was just curious, was it intentional?
Yes, everything was intentional in that letter, and the ambition was get this out, get this government to take a position and to understand the value of this, and we will feed our information step by step. So there's more to come. So I'm being more precise about responsibilities. We hope that the first letter there would shake them up enough to be interested in who is really responsible for this. Who is responsible for this?
I clearly hear you on that. I can't debate that. Awesome. So on the Swedish response, you know, people were disappointed to read this. I know you might not read, but this is the Swedish embassy in Addis Ababa. And they were talking about just recently about an election debate on, you know, gender equality debate, you know, in the, you know, you are advocating from August last year, the imprisonment of Jawar and other Oromo, you know, politicians and so on. So, but still, you know, they are going ahead with the election, even if 50, I mean, actually 80, to be precise, 97 seats will not be part of the election. Out of 500 something, but still the Swedish embassy in Addis was, you know, celebrating, you know, quote unquote, on gender equality debate, while, you know, women are, you know, gang raped for 15 days. You know, children are separate from their parents and becoming orphans and so on. So this was, you know, kind of sad situation to read for many people from Tigray. So what is your assessment of, you know, this, keeping it low? I mean, I know Sweden is a nice country that doesn't, you know, go like the US way and so on, but isn't it too much?
Yeah, so my reaction is that the situation as it is now is not ready for an election, because it won't be a fair election, a meaningful election, and it can only perhaps serve to give the possibilities to stay in power of those who have the power today, and that's not what elections are about. It's a question of getting ordinary people all over the country a possibility to voice their opinions, and the conditions for this, in my assessment, isn't there today. And though we were surprised that a year ago, or more than a year ago now, the election was postponed without giving a date, now when there is a decision about an election with a date, we feel that the situation is really not there for elections. It's a strange situation for us, of course, but you know, to have a fake election with the background that we have now is very sad. There is a need of a national dialogue which would agree on the basic things, and then the time hopefully could come for election. But to make it today without a dialogue and with a lot of violations having been committed so close to the election, and the fear that is there in some groups, of course, some will demonstrate by not at all taking part in the election. So this is not a real election. It's a sort of is using the positive term of election for the wrong purpose. So unfortunately, I don't think the situation is there, but it's not because people would like to have election and therefore they have election. It's not that.
Yeah, you know, the European Union agrees with you, and that's why they are not sending, you know, election observation team there. But Sweden, you know, at least through the embassy, is just saying, I mean, acting as if it's a normal election, as if things are, you know, normal. Even talking about, you know, this, you know, greenwashing, as we would call it in you know, the environmental sector. Yeah. So you don't want to go into that, I guess. I understand if you don't want to criticize.
No, I think what should have been said that, yes, we are positive in principle about elections, but first one must prove that there could be a fair and correct election. Then, of course, go ahead. But the election, I mean, the real election is not the one day or couple of days handing over sort of your vote. It's a question of securing that it's possible to be honest about it, and that there are alternatives of people, and people who are actively politicians who are imprisoned because they have different opinions. That destroys the whole election.
Exactly.
So it's not whether there should be one day where you could put your vote in the box. It's a question of a whole process to guarantee that the future of the country will be in the hands of those who really have support by people, and I don't think that is there for the moment.
Great. So my last question would be on the outlook, on your outlook of how you see things would play out in the coming weeks and months. But before that, I want to play a short clip where you talked about the future connecting to the past in 2009. This speech is from 2009 on your hope. So I will be asking you what your hope is when it comes to the...
Over the past 60 years, the Council of Europe has indeed achieved a great deal in building a continent where disputes are solved by dialogue, injustice is corrected by agreed standards and procedures protecting the rights of the individual. This has also sowed hope among many. We must now empower the next generations with the same hopes, means and abilities to defend the true European values. Thank you.
Yeah, this is from 2009. It was about 6 years of European Union, but also you are outlining about your hope about the future, dialogue. Again, you know, the keyword I see everywhere is dialogue. So, Mr. Hammarberg, what is your reading or your assessment, your hope in the coming weeks and months when it comes to Tigray vis-a-vis the international community, Swedish, European Union contribution towards that?
I hate to say this, but I think it depends to a very large extent on whether the outside world is reacting or not. Because leaving to Ethiopians themselves to deal with this tremendously complicated and damaging situation as they have now is really not possible. There is an absolute need for international solidarity. Of course, Europe has a role to play. It's not the only one. I mean, also the other parts of the world should take part. But this is really a moment where it's very difficult for the people inside to change the situation, because the military forces are so strong, and the methods to be used nowadays is so strong with all the sorts of weapons that are there, including chemical weapons, for instance, which has come to, I understand now, to be used in Tigray. So that's number one. And the number two, of course, is to, if one day there is an election, that there will be election of a team of people, not only one, but a team of people who would have the interest of the people and the country itself as the important aspect and nothing else. And so there is, of course, a responsibility among those who have the capacity and the time and the education to play a leading role in the country. But it requires that those who are in prison because of their opinions, they must be released. They must be released and have a chance to help developing the country in the right direction. That's very important.
Yeah, but one thing that I said this was my last question, but talking about prisons and so on, imprisonment. So there is this understanding, at least in many people in Tigray and elsewhere, that Abiy Ahmed, from all these crimes in Tigray, including Isaias Afwerki of Eritrea, they should see their way to the ICC, the International Criminal Court, based on these crimes and so on. So how do you see that play out in your, based on your experience elsewhere?
Yeah, the legal aspect is one that should be discussed more. There are international conventions, and Ethiopia has signed at least some of them. And of course, everyone has almost signed the Convention on Rights of the Child, but children are repressed also in this situation. And you're right that we should now secure that the international agencies and conventions should be used in a situation where it really is very important that they do. So someone should really assist the Ethiopian lawyers to go through all the international standards of relevance, and there are several, and so to begin to formulate so the cases would come up on the international arena when it comes to violations of the basic human rights, the basic rights in the world. There's a lot to be done there, in fact. And the decisions there are very, very important. And it's very difficult for governments to get away from sentences in these bodies. So there, the United Nations, not least, has a very important role.
Great. It's great to converse with you. It was my pleasure to pick your brain on based on your experience, your know-how, your activism, and I'm sure our viewers benefit from this insightful conversation. Thank you so much for your time, Mr. Thomas Hammarberg, and have a good evening.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, dear viewers, this was my conversation with Thomas Hammarberg in English. We will do also in Swedish. For those who speak Swedish, you follow us on our Swedish conversation. If you are following on YouTube and for Facebook, please follow, subscribe, share, so that many viewers can also get access to this important material. Your host will be Tacho Asafa. Bye for now.